All right, let's jump right into this. Welcome back to our explainer, where today we are unpacking section 2 of this absolutely massive, legendary epic, the Mahabharata. We're going to start with a pretty bloody myth and then zoom way out to map the entire architecture of, well, the greatest story ever told. What we're looking at today is called the Parvas Sangraha. You can think of it as the ultimate master index. But hey, unlike any table of contents you've ever scrolled through, this one comes with a serious body count, deep cosmic philosophy, and a literal promise of spiritual salvation.
Here is our roadmap for navigating the Parvas Sangraha. First, the lakes of blood, then anatomy of an army, the path to war, the Kurukshetra war, aftermath and ascension, and finally, the enduring legacy.
Section 1. The Lakes of Blood.
To really grasp the sheer scale of the Mahabharata, we've got to look at the horrifying origins of its central battlefield, Samanta-panchaka. Long before our main storyline even kicks off, the text tells us that Rama, specifically the son of Jamadagni, went on this fiery rampage. Driven by an absolute intolerance for injustice, he completely annihilated the noble race of Kshatriyas. But he didn't just defeat them in combat, he literally formed 5 lakes of blood. Just picture that. Overpowered by rage, he stood in those gory waters and offered blood oblations to his ancestors. And his forefathers, led by Richika, showed up and basically said, "Okay, we accept this, but please calm down. Ask for a boon." So Rama asked to be absolved of his sins and for these bloody lakes to be turned into a holy shrine. And they agreed. So this cursed ground, forged out of pure vengeance, was paradoxically blessed into a sacred site. And as we'll see, it is exactly on this totally flat spot that millions are later going to perish.
Section 2. Anatomy of an Army. Now, before we get into the grand narrative of the families involved, the source text takes this really fascinating detour into military mathematics. It wants to show us exactly what went to war on that holy ground. Ancient arithmeticians calculated their military hierarchy incredibly meticulously. It starts super small. A single pati is basically a squad consisting of just 1 chariot, 1 elephant, 3 horses, and 5 foot soldiers. But from there, it multiplies exponentially. 3 patis make a senamucha, 3 of those make a guma, and it scales rapidly all the way up the chain, through a vahini, a pritana, a chamu, and an anikini. Finally, you take an anikini 10 times over, and you get this colossal military division known as an akshohini. When you actually do the math on a single akshohuni, the volume is just staggering. We're talking over 21,000 chariots, 21,000 elephants, more than 65,000 horses, and well over 100,000 foot soldiers. And remember, this is just one division. Try to visualize the logistics, the sheer noise, the human and animal mass required just to move that many beings. But here is the number that should really make your jaw drop. 18. 18 of these complete massive akshahunis assembled at the holy lakes of Kurukshetra. That is literally millions of beings. And the source text puts it so chillingly. It says, "Time, whose acts are wonderful, assembled them on that spot, and having made the Kauravas the cause, destroy them all." Section 3. The Path to War. So now that we have a grasp on the terrifying scale of these armies, let's zoom out to the first 5 books, or Parvas, of the epic. These lay the intricate, slow-burning groundwork for all this devastation. And the sequence builds the tension brilliantly. We start with the Adi Parva, which covers the miraculous births of our heroes, their narrow escape from a burning house made of lac, and Arjuna winning Draupadi. Then we hit the Sabha Parva, and that infamous game of dice, you know the one. Yudhishthira loses his entire kingdom to the wily Sakuni, leading to Draupadi's terrible public distress right there in the assembly hall. Stripped of their royal wealth, that event triggers the Aranika Parva, a grueling 12-year wilderness exile where the brothers have to survive and gather celestial weapons. That's followed by the Virata Parva, hiding in humiliating disguise for a year, and finally, the Udyoga Parva. This is the last desperate chance for peace. The illustrious Krishna personally goes to the Kaurava court to negotiate as an envoy, but Duryodhana is completely blinded by pride and rejects him. At that point, war becomes absolutely inevitable. Section 4. The Great Kurukshetra War. When diplomacy ultimately fails in the Udyoga Parva, the narrative abruptly plunges us straight into the bloodbath of the next cluster of books. It's like a switch flips in the text, and it's super jarring. You go from the simmering tension of the early books, which are full of statecraft, philosophical debates, and wilderness survival, straight into an explosion of visceral, day-by-day battlefield accounts.
the epic transforms into a brutal combat log, where legendary, supposedly invincible warriors are felled one by one over 18 agonizing days. We can literally track this horrific 18-day war by its fallen commanders, who actually give their names to the books. The Bhishma Parva covers the first 10 days, ending with the mighty patriarch Bhishma laid out on that iconic bed of arrows. Then Drona takes command for 5 days of absolute chaos, which includes the deeply tragic death of the young hero Abhimanyu. Karna then commands for 2 days until he falls in single combat with Arjuna. Salya lasts just half a day, ending in a brutal club fight between Bhima and Duryodhana, where Duryodhana's thighs are completely shattered. But the absolute worst? That's the Saptika Parva. On that night, Ashwatthama, filled with this cowardly rage over his father Drona's death, sneaks into the Pandava camp and slaughters the remaining warriors in their sleep. Almost no one survives.
Section 5. Aftermath and Ascension. The weapons finally fall silent on the battlefield, but the epic is far from over. This final sequence of books deals with profound grief, the heavy burden of duty, and deep cosmic philosophy. From the Stree Parva, with the heart-rending lamentations of the women in Gandhari's wrath, we move into the Santi and Anusasana Parvas. Here, a deeply depressed Yudhishthira gets massive treatises on duties, emergencies, and salvation from the dying Bhishma. Years later, in the Ashramavasika Parva, the elders retreat to the woods. Then comes the Mashala Parva, which has this incredibly vivid, tragic imagery. The warriors of the Vrishni race, cursed and intoxicated, slaughter each other on a beach using blades of grass that literally turn into iron thunderbolts in their hands. Insane, right? Finally, the Mahaprasanika Parva, Yudhishthira's grueling final journey into the cold Himalayas toward heaven, where his brothers drop dead one by one. He is accompanied only by a loyal dog, who turns out to be Dharma himself. These books totally transform the epic from a war story into a profound spiritual guide.
Section 6. The epic's enduring legacy. So having mapped out this incredible, sprawling architecture, we really have to ask, why does the sage Vyasa outline all these massive numbers in sequential books right here in Section 2? Well, the crucial point is that understanding this structural outline isn't just about reading a table of contents. The text views the structure itself as sacred. Vyasa states that listening to this summary in the morning or evening actually frees a person from the sins they committed during the day or night. He even equates the merit of reading this index to donating 100 gold-mounted cows to a learned brahmana. The text promises that just as a wide ocean is easily passable by men who have ships, this vast, intimidating history becomes easily navigable with the help of this specific chapter. Which leads us perfectly to this beautiful quote directly from the source. "There is not a story current in the world, but doth depend on this history, even as body upon the food it taketh." I mean, that is an incredibly bold flex, but it brilliantly illustrates the foundational power of this epic. It is literally claiming to be the narrative's sustenance, the basic nourishment for all other stories ever told. Think about that for a second. This zoom-out view of the 18 Parvas has shown us a universe of complex characters, divine interventions, devastating warfare, and brutal, unvarnished truths. And we've only just looked at the blueprint. If the table of contents alone features lakes of blood, math that scales to millions, and the total destruction of entire lineages, what incredible secrets and profound lessons await when we actually unpack the detailed stories? Well, we're going to find out. This series presents the Parvas of the Mahabharata in their original sequence, without altering the core narrative, to make the story easier to understand. Join us in the next explainer as we explore Section 3.